Hello and welcome to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society's second virtual pub night. We are travelling to the Highlands this Friday night after a good session in Speyside last weekend, and it was great so that so many of you could join in our Spirit of Speyside virtual pub session. But tonight we're in the Highlands and we've got a cracking night ahead of us. We have music coming up from the one and only Robin Lang. We're going to check in with the boys at Dornoch Distillery and Dornoch Castle Hotel. We've got a pub quiz with 3 society members coming live into the pub, brave souls that they are, to take part in that. And we're going to have a tasting with Richard the Nose Paterson, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. And he's going to be tasting some Dalmore whisky and some society bottlings. But first of all, let me introduce my glamorous co-host for the evening, Steven McConnachie, who is joining us from up in Aberdeen. He's a society ambassador based up there. How are you doing up there, Steven?
Very well, thanks. It's dull and dreich night here up in Aberdeen.
How's lockdown treating you? Are you surviving okay?
I'm fine, just bored.
Well, hopefully we'll get some entertainment tonight and you'll be helping out with the tasting that we have with Richard later on. So I think we'll just crack on. We've got a lot to get through tonight, and I would like to bring in our old pal, Robin Lang. He's been doing some live stream music for us before, and it's been going down very, very well. So we're delighted that he's joining us tonight. How are you doing, Robin?
Hi, Richard. Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Good stuff.
The bad weather hasn't reached us yet.
Glad to hear it. Well, as long as we're tucked up indoors with a dram, we're doing okay. So I'll hand over to you, Robin. I know you've got something special lined up for us tonight, and a wee whiskey as well.
Yes, well, it's the welcome to my den. I'm sorry we can't all be meeting in the pub. It's Friday night after all, but you're in my den, and I hope you're in somewhere comfortable with a few drams handy as well. Tonight is a Highland Distillery, Highland whisky theme, so Richard offered to give me something from the list, so I picked this one, 112.45. It's an 18-year-old Inchmurrin, and the reason I picked it is because I did the tasting note.
Right,
beautiful and perfumed.
Well,
can I read you the tasting note?
Take it away and tell us about it, and give us some tunes. It's all yours.
This is an unusual dram that made us imagine flower meadows and a freshly painted carousel, children on hay bales enjoying candy floss and ice cream, a truffle hound rooting about under oak trees. Who writes this crap anyway? No, it really is a lovely perfumed dram. When you smell this, it makes you imagine biting into a bunch of flowers or kissing a woman on the neck or something like that. But anyway, I've got my dram. Right here is my guitar, and I'm going to kick off with my special sipping whiskey. It's a song, of course, about drinking good whiskey rather than the cheap stuff, but it's also my Friday night song because, well, there's a ritual, isn't there? Friday night is the end of the week. The sun is going down, the barbecue is on, my friends are coming round, we'll stay up till the dawn. It's Friday evening, the working week is done, it's time to open the whiskey. Now everybody's here, I've got some music on, there's ice for the beer, candles on the lawn, the moon's coming up, the sun will soon be gone. It's time to open the whiskey. Not just any old whiskey will do. It's got to be something special for you. You are my friend, and I'll give you your due and pour you a special sip of whiskey. How about this one? It's 29 years old. The color is a blissful burgundy gold. Just give it time for the magic to unfold. Another fine special sipping whiskey. It doesn't need soda. It doesn't need ice. Don't mix it with cola, ooh, that would not be nice. There's fruit and flowers and honey and spice, and a special sippin' whiskey. Not just any old whiskey will do. It's got to be something special for you. You are my friend, and I'll give you your due, and pour you a special sippin' whiskey. If you appreciate whiskey, you'll appreciate friends. That's just how it hits me, it seems to make sense. Old friends, bookends, single malts or blends. Special friends need special whiskey. Keep all the cheap stuff for the rest of the pack. They might be happy with Johnny or Jack. They're glugging it, they're slugging it, they're knocking it back. We'll stick to special sippin' whiskey. Keep all the cheap stuff for your unwanted guests. Rub it on your chest if you've got pests in your vest. For cooking, for cocktails at night, just pass the test. Or give it to the school tombola. Yeehaw. Yeah, I have to imagine you all clapping away in the background there. So, yeah, special sipping whiskey, 18-year-old from the Highland line, Helensburgh, or wherever. It's in the Highlands anyway. Slanjivar. So I was going to give you my song about whiskey for breakfast. I don't have whiskey for breakfast every day. I want you to be quite clear about that. But there have been occasions in the past when I have had whiskey for breakfast, and these are memorable occasions somehow. And I think, to my mind, whiskey is a little bit like, I guess it's like champagne. A good whiskey is a drink that you can have anytime, any place. It doesn't matter, especially if it's celebratory. Now, there is a wee story. I hesitate to tell a wee story on a virtual pub because it feels kind of, impersonal and anonymous. But I don't want you to think there's anything racist in this story, but it's about a Scotsman and an Englishman having an argument. And they're arguing about, well, who does the best full breakfast? Is it the full English breakfast or the full Scottish breakfast? Because most of us know they're not exactly the same thing. And the Scotsman was patiently explaining that we get things in Scotland for breakfast that you never even heard of in England. You've got Stornoway, black pudding, tatty scones, fried dumpling, Aberdeen butteries, Lorne sausage, etc., etc. And the Englishman was getting a bit bored with his litany, and he chipped in. He said, well, we have Cumberland sausage. And the Scotsman jumped to his feet and pulled a knife out of his sock and was about to cut the Englishman's throat. And the Englishman recoiled and he said, what did I say? What have I done? And the Scotsman said, you should know, ever since 1746, Cumberland has been a dirty word in the Highlands. And the Englishman said, I'm very sorry, I didn't know. My Scottish history's not that good. But please, I won't mention it again. Calm down. So the Scotsman put his knife back in his sock and sat down. Seemed to calm for a minute or two. And then he started laughing. And the Englishman was confused. He said, 1 minute you're attacking me with a knife, and the next minute you're laughing. What's so funny? What you have to explain. And the Scotsman says, well, the truth is, I'll tell you the truth, we don't eat that stuff for breakfast. That's just for the tourists. The Englishman said, oh, all right. He said, fair enough, but what do you have for your breakfast, Jock? Come on, tell me what you have for your breakfast. And the Scotsman said, that's easy. I have the same every single day in life. I have a big plate of haggis, I have a double scotch, and I have a border collie dog. The Englishman said, a border collie dog? What's a border collie dog for? To eat the haggis. So, whiskey for breakfast. I take whiskey for my breakfast to see me through the day. Just one little whiskey, it helps me on my way. Clears my tubes, thins my blood, clarifies my head. Just one little whiskey, then I go back to bed. I don't need no scrambled eggs. I don't need no bacon. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. That's the chorus, by the way. Nobody will laugh if you want to join in. Oh, some folk love their cornflakes and others porridge oats. Shredded wheat, sugar puffs, whatever floats your boat. If I have to eat grass for breakfast, this is the kind I'll choose. A little bit of barley converted into booze. And I don't need no scrambled eggs. I don't need no bacon. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. I come from the land of Calvin, the devil, and John Knox. Winter lasts for half a year, we sleep in woolly socks. But if I lived in southern lands and woke up in the sun, I wouldn't eat breakfast whiskey, well, maybe just the one. I don't need no scrambled eggs. I don't need no bacon. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. Oh, cloudy old Bernasconi lives in San Moritz, and he cleans his teeth with whiskey. He very seldom spits. He brushes, then he gargles and swallows it with glee. And then he comes down for breakfast, and he has the same as me. And I don't need no scrambled eggs. I don't need no bacon. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. So when I go to Isla, I party all night long. Fun and drams and stories, even the occasional song. And sometimes I take breakfast before I go to bed. But if there's nothing in the fridge, well, I'll have another dram instead. I don't need no scrambled eggs. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. And when I go to Dufftown, I stay at the Town of Bray, and Alan keeps some whiskey in an aerosol spray. Spreads a mist of whiskey over my beans on toast, and then he squirts some on my tongue, and I like that the most. I don't need no scrambled eggs. I don't need no bacon. A single malt is all I need to stop my hands from shaking. To stop my bones from aching. To stop my skin from flaking. To stop my heart from breaking. Unless I am mistaken, I'll be dancing like a Jamaican. Oh, whiskey for my breakfast, and I'm limbo dancing all day. Okay, I was thinking about songs that have Highland distilleries in them. And I don't have that many, but I remembered this one. It's a song about old Pulteney, which of course is a distillery in Wick, and the song's called Snuffed Out. You get the connection, don't you? Wick, Snuffed Out. A few years ago, I was invited by the distillery to be the after-dinner speaker at the Prohibition Ball, the old Pulteney Prohibition Ball. And just to be absolutely clear, this is a ball to celebrate the end of Prohibition, not the beginning of it. Because after the First World War, a number of places in Scotland had referendums or plebiscites to decide whether they wanted to be alcohol free or not. And some of the strangest places, Kirkintilloch, we all know about, part of edge of Glasgow, Stromness in Orkney, and of course Wick and various other places, they voted to be alcohol free, and they had their own form of prohibition for 25 years. In the case of Kirkintilloch, much longer. So I was invited to be the after dinner speaker at the Prohibition Ball, and I thought, oh, I'll write a song for this event. And I was thinking about, in those days, you know, Wick was a fishing port, a very important fishing port, and it had a distillery. And then the First World War came along, and I imagined all these, you know, rough, tough fishermen going off to fight in the war, and then they come back, and suddenly they find that they can't get a drink anywhere in the town. And I imagined that could be a bit of a shock for them. So I wrote this song about being a fisherman in a town that doesn't sell booze. And for the chorus, I remembered, I think it was Dean Martin said that, he said, I feel sorry for people who don't drink. He said, when they wake up in the morning, that's the best they're going to feel all day. So this is called Snuffed Out, and this will be my last song, although I may come back later in the evening when you're all completely wrecked. Is that okay? Woke up this morning, there was something wrong, my head was strangely clear. If this is being sober, I'll be glad when it's over, bring back my whiskey and beer. All day long, it's the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. I live in a town that's grey and damp for the best part of the year. I don't understand why they had to ban my whiskey and my beer. All day long is the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. The work of a fisherman out on the sea is lonely, cold and tough. When he gets ashore, he likes nothing more than a little of the old hard stuff. All day long, it's the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. Mr. Churchill likes a fancy garden, whiskey and good jokes, but he lost his seat to a pussyfoot Pete who says he never drinks or smokes. All day long, it's the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. Me and my buddies come back from the war, soaked in blood and sweat. What could be wrong with a pint and a song, but this is all the facts you get. All day long, it's the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. Woke up this morning, there was something wrong, my head was strangely clear. If this is being sober, I'll be glad when it's over, bring back my whiskey and beer. All day long, it's the best I'm gonna feel. What they did to me is wrong, this law should be repealed. Yeehaw! Well, Slanjivar, Richard, back over to you.
Fantastic, Robin. As always, an absolute pleasure to see you and to hear you in such good form. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully you'll stick around, maybe play us a wee tune to close the pub session off later on.
I'll stick around, but I don't know how sober I'll be by then.
No problem. Right, Robin, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you later. Right, nice way to start the evening, Stephen.
Cracking.
Okay, let's move on. We've got a couple of guys joining us from up in Dornoch. Let's see where they are. There's Phil.
Richard.
Simon.
Oh, hi, how are we doing?
This is
Brady Bunch.
Phil and Simon Thompson. Oh, so we've got someone else as well.
Hi.
Old enough to be in the
Hi,
pub.
how are you? Oh,
How are you guys doing?
yeah, we're good. We've been mashing all week, so we're back in kind of reduced contact production. So we're glad to be back. Been making sanitizer for a while, but yeah, everything's good. Can't complain.
Yeah, good stuff.
Friday.
Obviously, the hotel up there is a partner bar for the society. Tell us a wee bit about the setup at the hotel before we get to talk about the distillery.
Sure. So we celebrate our 20th anniversary for our family being at the hotel this year. So we did we've done a few bottlings. Obviously, the plan was to sell them through the bar, through the hotel. But obviously things have kind of changed this year. So we've been there 20 years. Our focus is kind of on old and rare bottles. We try and kind of just fill the bar full of things that we would like to drink. So yeah, it's a really great place to be. It's not the biggest collection in the world, but it's certainly pretty interesting. So tonight we took a couple of bottles. I think Simon's got one, which he took from the bar. I've got one as well. So I've got 87.2, which is Milburn 1979, a nice gentle strength of 62.3% alcohol. So pretty much, modern filling strength. So really austere, minerally Milburn. So I think, Simon, did you take a Glenvor to taste tonight? Or?
Yeah, we've got a Glenvor 1979. There we go, 57.5 there. So a cheeky little early one there. Bottled 1995 for the society. Yeah, great dram. Big fan of Glenvor. Yeah, one of my favourite Inverness distilleries after. Probably Glenvor is probably number one for me. But the Milburn, just for the rarity factor, is always worth trying.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've got an amazing collection. I was up there when we did the North Coast 500 trip and popped in to see at the distillery and had a few drams at the bar that night, and it really is well worth a visit for whiskey lovers. It's a fantastic setup. Tell me a wee bit, because at the time you were just, I think, laying down maybe your first barrels of whiskey at the distillery. What is the latest on that, and when can we expect to see some bottlings from Dornoch?
Well, we obviously do our independent bottling range, so we do casks. Usually most months or every second month we'll have a range of casks coming out, but this year should have our first 3-year-old available, which will be ready in, I think, early July. So the plan was to bottle that August, September, and try and get it out into the market and get some fairly reasonable price, and try and get it to as many people as possible, really, at a fair price. So hopefully, all things going well. Obviously, supply chains are kind of stretched and so on at the moment. We're aiming for August, September for that release. So that'll be pretty exciting for us. It's kind of some of our early whiskey or early spirits, very comparable to like these sorts of old, austere, kind of minerally Inverness whiskies that kind of have that austerity and that kind of mineral content. But now the character certainly that Simon's producing in the distillery is a lot prettier. We focus a lot on obviously brewer's yeast is a big part of what we do. So we actually use Cromarty Brewery, which is we use their spent brewer's yeast. I'm drinking some Cromarty Brewery tonight, supporting local beer. And we use their yeast pretty much every single week. Very high quality, gives us lots of fruity esters. So have you got anything you want to mention about distillery, Simon?
Well, we've got a question here. A question came in from our colleague, Dr. Andy, our whiskey educator at the Society. He's asking anything unusual about your distillery setup, what's different? I know there's a lot that's unusual about it. So what would you...
It's a strange little setup. Most of the major differences come from our materials. So we only use heritage varieties of barley. So we've been using lots of Plumage Archer, Mars Otter, and we combine that with brewer's yeast. So lately we've been using a lot of spent brewer's yeast. Before that, we were doing a lot of our own propagations of different yeast varieties. So we've probably used 30-something different yeast varieties in the last few years. So spent brewer's yeast is quite an old way of doing it. we've been having a lot of fun with that. It's a bit of a reverse engineering of some of the styles of whiskey which were occurring in the 60s, 50s, 40s, and there's some interesting pathways that occur when you use spent brewer's yeast. But that's just one of many strange little things we do. So all our washbacks are oak and open topped. We barely clean them as well, so we're looking to carry over a lot of bacteria and wild yeast that we gather from batch to batch as well. So all drops in yield adds to the flavour and complexity of it as well. So as well, I think the distillery itself is crammed into a little building that's about 5 by 4 meters. So we've only got a production capacity. Well, we produce about 10 to 12,000 RLA a year. So it's a pretty small scale dinky operation, but we have a lot of fun with it.
Quality over quantity then, guys, eh?
Well, that's the idea. We'll see. We can say all kinds of big things just now, but until it's in the bottle and people have a chance to taste it, we'll have to wait and see what people think about it. So, but we think so. We think so.
What's the most obscure or unusual cask that you've got currently that you've sourced from that?
We've well, I don't know. Are you quite happy for me to talk about this, Simon?
Well, is this getting recorded or is it not getting recorded?
No. Nobody will see.
Okay. So, so two unusual ones. Well, we've got a few different unusual ones. So, technically, it will never be whiskey because of the cask type. But we've got some Japanese cherry blossom casks. They're pretty good. So just watching, see how they develop, just for a bit of fun. Got some Mizunara casks on the go as well. So again, that's another long-term prospect. So the way the Japanese use them, it should be left for 10, 15, 20 years plus. So that'll be a long-term one with the Mizunara. So you probably won't see that for 20 years if we can get away with it. Beyond that, most of our casks are we've sourced directly from small-scale independent organic producers. Again, everything we do at the distillery is organic certified. So our gin, our whiskey. But so all of Rosso and Pedro Jimenez casks have come from a producer in Montilla who does only organic. Most of our casks from them as well. We were able to do a deal a few years ago where we were able to get hold of a number of old Solera casks as well. So the oldest casks from the Solera system were introduced into that system in the Sorry, Phil, what was the dates on that? On your Solera casks?
Yeah, the woods. The earliest woods from the 20s and the youngest woods from the 60s. From the Solera box that we have.
Yeah, and then all our bourbon casks have come from small-scale American independent organic certified producers as well. So being so dinky like we are, we're able to work directly with other people with similar points of view and come to good arrangements. So we do a lot of refill casks as well. So I think our spirit probably works best in refill casks because it allows the spirit character to shine. But we've got quite often what we do is we do a lot of independent bottlings ourselves. So when we bottle a cask, we'll then reuse that cask again for our own liquid to go into. So we bottle a lot of interesting stuff, and then those casks end up getting our liquid put back in it again.
Sounds absolutely brilliant, Simon. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to the releases, and really good to see you guys and catch up on what's going on up there. So hopefully be up the road in real life before too long, and we'll get to do some for ourselves. So thanks very much, guys, and stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Cool, thanks, Richard.
Right.
Cheers, Jen.
Cheers. Okay, Stephen, time for our pub quiz, which already has a reputation for being one of the toughest in the whiskey world. We've got certainly a challenging set of questions tonight, I think, and we thought we would have a bit of fun with our members to see who was brave enough to actually come into the pub tonight and do the quiz live on the air. So we put the shout out. There is a good prize on offer, which I can pull off my shelf right now, and that is one of the Spirit of Speyside bottlings, the 36172 orange oil and wine corks, which is an absolute belter. Obviously, it's sold out very, very quickly. We've managed to source a bottle, and we put the shout out to our members to see who was brave enough to come into the pub to take part live. Obviously, everyone else can join us and come into the comments, but we're asking our participants to do their own thing, answer the questions by themselves, and Stephen's going to be our quiz master. But let's say hello to Rory and Stuart, and let's say hello to David. Is David there? Yes, he is. Good stuff. How are you all doing, gents?
Full house.
Yeah, good.
All set? Good stuff. Right. I'm going to bow out of this one. I'm going to hand over to Stephen, and he is going to be your quiz master. So without further ado, this is our Highland Whisky Festival pub quiz. And Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Richard. Right. Eyes down, look in, sharp pencils. Let's crack on. We'll hit question 1 first, which is the company McDonald, Muir and Muir changed its name in 1996. What did they change their name to, and which Highland single malt shares the same name? A few puzzled faces there. No? There's a couple of, there's one poker face at least. Okay, we'll move on to question 2. And that should just come up now. Which of these society bottlings is not from a Highland distillery? It's multiple choice of 4 here. We have A, cask number 70.36. It will come up. There we go. Conspicuous cornucopia of fruits. Easy to say this early in the night. B, cask number 135.19, easy liver. Is it C, cask number 77.56, Sporran Jangler? Or D, cask number 55.56, Chuchter Dubstep? Now, there's no phone a friend and there's no coughing in the audience. Terrible. Point deducted there for the general. Or was he a major? No, it was major, wasn't he? All got those 2 questions? We thumbs up? Yeah. Good. He's okay down the bottom. Okay. Question 3. Name the Society's 3 Highland partner bars, and for the pedantic among us, not including Speyside, a point for each one. One of them joined us earlier in the year and is more northeasterly based, just in case. Question 4. What taste does the following flavour compound, Cisoc lactone, generally give? Is it A, coconut and gorse flower, B, vanilla toffee? Is it C, fruity apple, or D, spicy clove? Okay. Hope nobody's looking up Google for any of these answers. Question 5. In this town, you'll find one distillery known for its waxy character, while the other distillery next door is currently being resurrected. For 2 points, name the 2 distilleries. This should be one of the easier of the questions. Puzzled faces or poker faces, I'm not sure. These guys aren't giving much away. Okay, question 6. Which of these distilleries was one of the last to use coal fires under its stills? Is it A, Edredour, B, Ardmore, C, Fetter Cairn, or D, Glengoyne? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Question 7. This distillery is located right on the high street with the sea, just a short jaunt away. Which is it? Is it A, Pulteney, B, Oban, C, Wolfburn, or D, Arbiki? Quite a geographical spread there, which shows the extent of the Highland region in Scotland. Okay, question 8. Which of our 12 flavour profiles is this colour? Okay, we'll move on to question 9. What kind of maltings system would you find at Glenord? A, drum, B, floor, C, Saladin. And the last question we move on to, quite appropriate. The name Dalmore means what in Gaelic? The name Dalmore means what in Gaelic? Ooh, a few shake of the heads there. We did say the questions were tough. Do you guys need us to go over any of those questions again? No? Okay. Ooh, defeated. That's a defeated face. Okay, so are we all done? All answers in?
Yep.
Yep. Gents, great. Richard,
Right.
Richard, have we the answers in?
We've got all the answers in. They are tallied, and we have a clear winner. Maybe I won't reveal the actual scores, but we've got a clear winner, and that is Stuart, who did very well. Well, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 5 points out of that very tough quiz. So very good job by Stuart. You're our clear winner this evening. So I'm very happy to say that you'll be getting this sent to you very soon. But thanks very much to the guys for taking part. So we'll just run through the answers for everyone else that was taking part I'll just rewind the questions. And Stephen, you want to just go through the answers to these, put us out of our misery?
Yeah, absolutely. So, question 1, the company MacDonald and Muir changed its name in '96. What did they change their name to, and which Highland single malt shares the same name? And the answer was Glenmorangie. You get less of a point if you say Glenmorangie. Question 2, which of these society bottlings is not from a Highland distillery? The answer is cask D, cask number 5556, the Chuchter Dubstep. Question 3, name the society's 3 Highland partner bars, not including Speyside. A point for each one. And the answers, I don't think, will come up on your screen, will they, Richard?
No, afraid not.
The answers were the Grill in Aberdeen, the Glenesk in Edzell, lovely whiskey selection of Glenesk whiskies, and Glenmorangie that Dylan has there. And of course, we couldn't forget the guys up in Dornoch at the Dornoch Castle Hotel. Lovely place, great selection of whiskies, and great chat earlier, guys. Great to hear the work you're doing. So, question 4. What taste does the following flavour compound, Sizoke Lactone, generally give? A, coconut and gorse flower, B, vanilla toffee, C, fruity apple, or D, spicy clove. And the answer was A, coconut and gorse flower. Question 5. In this town, you'll find one distillery known for its waxy character, while the other distillery next door is currently being resurrected. For 2 points, name the 2 distilleries. They are, of course, Clynelish and Brora. Particular favourite of mine. Question 6. Which of these distilleries was one of the last to use coal fires under its stills? And just go to my, so it's A, Edredour, B, Ardmore, C, Fetter Cairn, or D, Glengoyne. And the answer is B, Ardmore. Question 7. This distillery is located right on the high street with the sea just a short jaunt away. Which is it? Is it A, Poultney, B, Oban, C, Wolfburn, or D, Ardbeke? And the answer is Oban. Question 8. Which of our 12 flavour profiles is this colour? And the answer is dry and spicy, if you remember rightly. Spicy and dry, sorry.
Spicy and dry.
Dry. Question 9. What kind of maltings systems would you find at Glenord? A, drum, B, flour, or C, Saladin? And the answer is A, drum. And the final question, question 10. The name Dalmore means what in Gaelic? And it is big meadow or field.
Tough quiz, Stephen.
Very, very tough quiz. And happy man there looking for a good bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's David just dropped out of the stream. So I don't know if he's able to come back. Guys, thanks very much for taking part. Very brave of you, but there can only be one winner tonight. That's Stuart. So congratulations, Stuart. And we'll be getting that bottle on its way to you very soon. So hope you enjoy that.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Good night.
Right. Now, so, Stephen, time to drink some whiskey, I think.
If we must.
I know you wanted to get changed because you're feeling a wee bit underdressed, given the reputation of the man who's about to join us. But I think we're just going to crack on. And if he feels that you're not dressed appropriately for the occasion, then what can we say? It's the one and only Richard Paterson, who, if you look up his LinkedIn profile, it will tell you he's been a master blender at White & Mackay for 50 years. That's 50, 50, and 5 months at time of counting, which is quite extraordinary. It's not often you look at someone's resume and see a job that's gone on for more than 50 years. Quite astonishing. Also the best dressed man in the whisky world. So Richard, delighted that you could join us in the virtual pub tonight. A real pleasure to have you with the society.
It's a great pleasure to be here and to see so many familiar faces. Stephen, I've not seen you for a long time, and you know we had Stephen as well just over across there. So it says Stuart and everybody else. It's just wonderful to be out here in lockdown and having a wee dram and sharing it with you. So it's a great pleasure, Richard, and thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Now, I just imagine that you get up in the morning, even at lockdown, and put on a suit and a silk tie, and this is the way you live your life, regardless of the conditions.
Well, you know, we've been in lockdown, you know, 5 weeks and what have you, and we've had quite a number of presentations online, and I generally would dress up as I normally do during the day. I, you know, when I'm out in the garden, I wear a dinner suit. And then when I have my dinner at night, it's usually another dinner suit. So I try and keep the traditions up in the normal way.
Fantastic.
Some people would say I'm a bit of a diva, but who cares?
So I think we should drink some whiskey. First up, we're going to have a drop of your Dalmore 15-year-old, Richard. So I'll hand over to you and you can tell us all about it.
Well, that's very kind of you, Richard. We've got some Dalmore 15. There we get into the camera. Yeah, this is one that's very, very close to my heart. And just because actually Stephen mentioned already, Dalmore was established in 1839 by Sir Alexander Matheson, who came over from Hong Kong. He made his money there and for a tenant to really start the distillery because Sir Alexander Matheson was so wealthy that in fact he wanted somebody else to look after it. So of course he got his very good friend Andrew Mackenzie, who was only 25, his brother Charles, and they entered the distillery quite late on in 1867 and went into full production on the 26th of January 1868. What you must bear in mind that more than anything is that Andrew Mackenzie wanted to make his mark more than anybody. And therefore, what he did was he doubled the capacity of the distillery in 1874. But more importantly, instead of selling self whiskey, that's new whiskey, which was the norm during the 19th century, he decided for the very first time to age his whiskey, not for 1 or 2 or 3 years, but as many as 20, 30 years. And that is something that I later inherited because we had many, many aged whiskies going up, as you possibly know, up to 64 years old. The one that we're going to sample tonight, normal Capita glass, is of course the Dalmore 15 years old. And this is matured in 3 different styles of sherry. The first of these is the Methuselah sherry, which I happen to have a bottle here. This is Methuselah sherry, and Methuselah naturally means very old. And this, as you can see, is not less than 30 years old. And this, of course, is from Gonzalez Baez, 70% Palomino Fino, 25% Pedro Jimenez. But when you see that lovely, look at how dark the sherry is. This is 127 grams of sugar per litre. So we bring in these sherry butts, 5 litres for every cask. And by the time it gets to Dalmore Distillery, we empty the remnants, so maybe only 2 litres left, and then we add our whiskey and we mature it. So that's the first part of the 15-year-old. We have Methuselah sherry, then we have Apostoli sherry, which is also 30 years old, but this time it's 90% Palomino Fino, 10% Pedro Jimenez. And then lastly, we use one called a beautiful Amoroso. Amoroso is 15 years old, and that is going to give and accentuate some of these beautiful flavors in the whiskey. So when you, now I'm not going to do it because I'm in my own house, but normally I would chuck it across the room. And I did my lovely Pauline there, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to just say to you that when you swirl it around, bring it up and say hello, and then pull back and say, how are you? Now, really, none of this stupid stuff going like this or this. I want you to really go into it and hold the glass there. You've got two nostrils. One will be better than the other. Do it very slowly. So when you bring it up and see that, you'll see the DNA, the chocolate orange of the Dalmore, these lovely citrus fruits. So make sure you have it there and then bring it up. But what you're going to see, because it's 15 years old, you're going to see the sultanas, the sun-kissed raisins, the marzipan. But when you look deeper into it, because of that Oloroso, Amoroso, you're going to see that hint of tangerine just emerging on the periphery of this beautiful whiskey. It's 15 years old. Don't knock it back like a cowboy, but really hold it long, long, long in the mouth. I mean, the top of the tongue, underneath the tongue, back in the middle. It's 15 years old, so give it 15 seconds in your mouth. So we'll just do a big slangiva. There we go. Here we are. 1, 2, 3. Let it go down. Wait for it. Wait for it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let it come up. First taste is important, but it's always the second taste. You need to go in for the second time. Let's wait a few minutes. Let it just digest. Let it really expose these flavors. Then here we go. One more time. And let it go over. If you want to accentuate these flavors, serve some coffee. First of all, after a creme brulee, after dinner, some coffee, Nicaragua, Java, Rwanda coffee. Hold it in the mouth, keep it there, and then let it go down. Then take a chocolate, bitter chocolate, 72% cocoa fat. Let that melt in the mouth, and that will combine with all the lovely flavors, and then let it go down. And if you're really in the mood just now with the lockdown, get out a Hoye de Montreux Epicure number 2, a Partagas number 2, or a Cohiba Behike 56, and just take your time and let the world go by. It's all about sipping, savoring, holding it, but don't be in a rush. Just hold it there. I see Stephen's just open his Cohibas. Fantastic. But that's
he even got dressed up now. He disappeared and changed his outfit, Richard.
I see that. But in this lockdown situation, what you want to do is really, really enjoy these whiskey flavors. Take your time, let it open up. But the longer you take over, like preparing your food, the longer you prepare the food, the longer you hold it in the mouth, digest the wonderful flavors. It's the same with the Dalmore 15 years old. Just sit, savor, and really revere these rare attributes that comes only from great casks. 90%, really 80-90% of the influence comes from these beautiful sherry casks. And of course, it's about holding it long in the mouth. Okay.
Fantastic. Now, we've got a society bottling, which, well, you're familiar with the distillery, but you might not be familiar with the bottling. Stephen, do you want to introduce that one?
Richard got it right there. Fantastic. A wee gem, a wee beauty. Slightly different flavor profile altogether. So this bottle is just here is 13.65, which is peppery pears and praline. It's from the spicy and sweet category. Uh, 13 years old, 58.6% strength, so it has a little bit more of that kick with the alcoholic strength. Second fill bourbon barrel. Freshly cut grass. A little bit of lemon drizzle there. Lemon drizzle cake as well in the nose. And then slight woodiness as well, like sandalwood sort of smell.
What do you reckon to that one, Richard?
The two
Yeah,
records.
Stephen's actually very right, because it's a second fill cask, a bourbon cask, you know, American white oak, and then you've got that sort of youngness about it because you've got that lemongrass. Now, had it actually matured in first fill bourbon and moved on to sherry, that would expose more of these lemongrass onto orange flavors. But he's quite right. That sort of floral, very delicate, very easy. It's a lovely style. It's a charming whiskey at this age. But, you know, when I look at this from our perspective, it needs to be taken on to the next level. And that will be using these big Methuselah 30-year-old casks just to accentuate the flavors even more. But very charming in its own right, a real seducer.
Mm. Yeah, and the nose, you very much get that Highland spice on the taste, peppery, slight mentally character as well, with a slight malty cereal, like dried fruits, almost like a papaya, mango, and a touch of coconuts as well. The new make spirit at Dalmore is absolutely fantastic, and I think this highlights that character before it's moved into such gorgeous sherry casks as well.
And that's quite a different strength as well than
Yeah.
what we're used to drinking from Dalmore, Richard. You know, that's
Yeah.
58.6%, so you can really feel that strength and feel the heat on the palate. Maybe needs
A lot
a
of
bit
people perhaps might not, you know, a lot of high strength whiskies sometimes mask the flavor. So, you know, maybe a couple of drops of water just to reduce it down. I prefer just drinking at natural strength. But when it's as high as this, just a few drops, and I mean just a few drops. Do not plunder it with water. Just a little few drops just to reduce it down slightly. And then that will let it open up a wee bit more to reveal some of these additional characters there.
I absolutely agree, Richard. I've got a good old faithful White Mackay water jug to just do some, literally just a few drops.
Yeah.
I found with this, it made it softer, gentle, less alcohol, strength and pepper, more floral, pears, honeyed almost.
Yeah. The sort of honeyed pear and then the gooseberry style of it's just reflective of what great American white oak is all about. It's really undiscovered. Remember, when it gets much older, you're not going to get that licorice and marzipan and that hint of balsamic until really double or even triple the age. But these are connotations that will come through really good warehousing and cask management.
In terms of the whiskey, I think it would pair well with either Spotted Dick or Sticky Toffee Pudding.
Yeah. A Fair Tartan would be good.
Fair Tartan.
Is another one that would just hold it there. But, you know, very nice, very good.
Yeah.
ready to move on, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, our second society dram that we'll have a chat about just now is this wee beauty just here. Meant to be for our Highland Whisky Festival, the physical side of it, rather than just an at-home, but needs must. So this is Distillery 52.32, which is appropriately named for our tasting tonight. It is Highly Entertaining, is the name of it. And it's from the Oily and Coastal range, 12 years old at 8.2% strength. And Richard, you mentioned about first fill bourbon barrels. You can see the colour on this is just that little bit deeper than the last one, in the Dalmore. It was in a bourbon hoggy. You smell that sea salt, that golden syrup, honey. There's a real balance of sweet and savoury with this. I can imagine being on a boat, travelling. I remember a journey to Jura years ago, and I was sat on a rib and was sipping some Islay and Jura whiskey on the boat. I think it was Jura Superstition we had on the boat. So this kind of salty, savoury kind of character always reminds me of the coastal and visits to Jura and Islay. And on the taste, there's a slight sort of the seaweed and the sweetness. Again, that similar sort of contrasting of styles, the savoury and the sweet.
What do you think of that one, Richard?
Yeah, I've always been a great fan of Pulteney Distillery, going back, of course, to 1826. Sir William Pulteney died 1805, of course, etc., etc. But he has the distillery now, of course, owned by Imber House, has that backbone structure. That's what I really like about it. And as Steven says, this particular one has that salinity just lingering about it, not dominate, but just there. And it's what I call salted bananas. That salted banana tang is really coming in there. But there's a lot of charm. There's a lot of savory notes that Steven's been saying with the sort of tropical fruits that are there. But it's got that backbone that I particularly like. But it's got great charm, great elegance, refinement. But that salinity just gives it that extra dimension, which can be very enjoyable. For this one here, I'm in a room. No, this is not for drinking here. This is for getting outside, maybe smoking a cigar with a little perhaps wind and rain in your face at the same time, just to bring out the boldness and that classicness of that Pulteney whiskey.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Richard. It's gorgeous. I actually noted in my tasting notes I did earlier on. It's very much like salted caramel. You could have this with a salted caramel bit of chocolate, or a Cullen skink. So you kind of go two opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah.
And adding literally just a few drops of water. It does not need much at all, and it brought out more of the tropical sweetness, less of the salty savoury, and more of that tropical sweetness, almost exotic, like a pineapple sort of nose.
Yeah, sort of overripe pineapple almost, because it just has that extra tang that kind of lingers on your palate, which is very, very acceptable.
Richard, if you don't mind taking a question, we've got Dr. Andy Forrester asking, how would you use Pulteney in a blend?
Well, actually, very good question, because this one here immediately falls into the bracket. I always go by, when I'm making up whiskies, my own particular chart, I go light, medium, or heavy. And Pulteney actually is one that I have in the sort of medium heavy range. So that actually gives good structure, backbone. So what happens is that you have the lightness and the charm, the elegance, refinement of the finesse of Speyside, which can be quite light and charming, but you need to be bolstered up by heavier ones like Pulteney, Glenkeith, Glentoshires, Ardmore, these kind of big boldness to equal the balance. So this is one that I like because it brings that, that's what I call that salinity into it. And it's one that I always come back to every time.
Very good.
What would be your favourite cask, Richard? Because obviously you've done many different styles, not just with Dalmore, but certainly what would be your favourite type of cask?
I always get that asked quite often. Obviously, over the years, sherry has played a major part in many of my different single malts as well as the blends. So I always like to use aged because we have so many different aged products in our portfolio, I like to use these heavy, very ripe sherry casks like Methuselah, like Apostles, Amoroso, sometimes Paolo Cortado, but I also love port as well. You know, the vintage ports, 1938, 61, 55, you know, 1970. These are also classics. They all have their part to play, but I think because of the many years I've spent with sherry and being in Jerez Formentera, that will probably be my greatest love. But there are other great casks as well. Great Cabernet, Merlot, you know, Cabernet Franc is another one that gives me great excitement when I use them. So there's still a lot out there still waiting to be discovered. You heard the guys up north using different kinds of woods. Many are still waiting to be discovered, and we'll use these in the forthcoming years just to show you how great they are. But one thing is for certain, all these whiskies that I'm talking about, all these different wines or, you know, sherry finishes, they need one word, and that is time. None of this stupid stuff, a few months. We're talking about if you want to accentuate and improve the luxury of your product, you must give them years to give them the influence, not to dominate the character, but to give you that charm and to give you that extra dimension to your whiskey.
And just one more question. What's your favorite whiskey?
What's your favorite whiskey? Very popular. Listen, I have many favorite whiskies. Obviously the ones at White Mackay, Dalmore, Fettercairn, Jura, Tamnavulin. I love them all, and that is absolutely sincere. But I also love, you know, the Balvenis, the Glenfiddich, you know, there are just so many in my portfolio. But I normally drink them and share with them, you know, with the people that you love. That's what it's all about, because they all give you such a kick at the right time, right place.
Cheers, Richard. Thank you.
Richard, an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for coming into our virtual pub. Great to see you, and great to share a whiskey, a virtual dram with you, and hope to catch up with you soon in real life.
Well, thanks very much, Richard. I just want to say all those people that have taken their time to sort of look in, it's so nice to see you. But the main thing at this present moment is to stay, you know, safe and stay healthy. And one thing to do, always keep sharing that great whiskey.
Slange to that.
Richard.
All the best. Wow, how about that?
Brilliant. I love catching up with Richard. It has been quite some time. I was at White Mackay for 6 years, so very fond memories of the man who led me on the path to loving whiskey.
Yeah, well, I think he's led many people down the path to loving whiskey, you know, and a tremendous ambassador for the whole whiskey world. And, you know, just great that he's been able to pop in and share some time with us tonight. So absolutely brilliant, Richard Paterson, the one and only. And we're nearing the end of our pub session, but we're very lucky to be able to go back to the whiskey bard himself. Robin Lang is still with us and has agreed to play us out with some more tunes. So, Robin, you get something else up your sleeve for us?
You notice I dressed up for the occasion as well.
I like your style. I like your style.
I'm the one that's let the side down now.
Yeah, that's right. You're the odd man out.
Dear.
It's very nice to see Richard again, Richard Paterson, and he does feature in one of my songs, you know, Richard and his tie. But I wouldn't dare sing that tonight.
Well,
Watershed.
We're after the watershed, Robin, so I think anything goes at this point.
Have I got time for 2 songs to wrap things up?
I think everyone would be delighted with 2 songs, so absolutely.
I was thinking about Richard. He does feature in one of my songs, and Dalmore features in one of my songs as well, but I've never actually written a song about Dalmore. And if I was to do that, I have a feeling it would be about a whiskey they make, which is one of my favourites. It's Alexander III.
Oh,
the historical figure, King Alexander III. You know, a guy who, this was in the days when Scottish kings were much more colourful. This was a guy who drank so much whiskey that he fell off his horse twice. The first time when he was hunting deer in the forest, and that's where the story of the whiskey story comes from Dalmore. And the second time when he was on his way in the dark and in a storm along the cliffs of Fife to get to his young wife before bedtime. And of course, that time he fell off his horse and died. So, and things were never the same in Scotland after that.
Right, Robin, over to you. Play us out.
This is a song about Shackleton's hut in Antarctica. Now, if you had to self-isolate anywhere, I would probably choose Shackleton's hut. Richard Paterson featured in this story about the discovery of a large number of bottles of whiskey that were tucked away under the floor of Ernest Shackleton's hut in Antarctica. And he was the one who sampled the whiskey and decided that which distillery it was from and so on. And they've made replicas. But I thought all that whiskey's been put back under the floor of the hut. It gave me an idea for a summer holiday. I'm going to fly across to Jamaica, then I'll swim to the Yucatan. I'll get to Venezuela any way I can. I'll cycle down the Andes right to the very tip. At Tierra del Fuego, I'll climb aboard a ship. And across the Weddell Sea, that ship will carry me. I'm gonna cleanse my soul at the southern pole. My life has lost its meaning, I think I'm in a rut. It's time for some spring cleaning, a month or two in Shackleton's hut. I won't take anything with me except for my teddy bear. I guess it could get lonely, depends how long I'm there. I won't miss the television, it's a poison in my brain. A drop of Shackleton's whiskey will help to keep me sane. And underneath the floor, there's 60 bottles or more. I'm gonna dig a little hole at the southern pole. My life has lost its meaning, I think I'm in a rut. It's time for some spring cleaning, a month or two at Shackleton's hut. Now Ernest was a good guy, respected by all his men. He took them to the world's edge and he brought them back again. And he embraced adventure every single day. And he knew the power of whiskey to keep the cold at bay. Mr. Shackleton could be a good role model for me. I'm gonna rock and roll at the southern pole. My life has lost its meaning, I think I'm in a rut. It's time for some spring cleaning, a month or two at Shackleton's hut. So now I've reached Antarctica, I landed with the tide. But a friendly penguin's told me the hut's on the other side. I guess I better start walking, it'll help to keep me warm. And a little bit of exercise never did me any harm. Oh, Pingo, come with me, I could use some company. We'll waddle and we'll stroll to the southern pole. My life has lost its meaning, I think I'm in a rut. It's time for some spring cleaning, a month or two or three at Shackleton's hut. Shackleton's hut. Now, the closing song. But before the closing song, I thought I'd give you a poem. This poem is a kind of a warning about, responsible drinking and all that. It was written by a friend of mine called Strathclaig, a legendary drinker, and it's called The Morning After. I don't feel too healthy this morning, with the whiskey fumes still in my head. No, I don't feel too healthy this morning, so I think I'll just stay here in bed. Perhaps later today I'll feel better, and maybe by late afternoon, when my hands have stopped trembling and shaking, I'll be able to eat with a spoon. Then later on in the evening, I'll be back to normal, I think. In fact, I'll be feeling so healthy, I might just go out for a drink. Strathclyde, great guy. This song is not from the Highlands. It was written by my friend Jimmy Leith. We went to school in Bathgate, just retuning here. But it's kind of about Glasgow, and I know that there are one or two people watching in from Glasgow. Mads is in Glasgow, and I know there are some people who are from Glasgow. John McShane, probably not there at the moment. This is a finishing up song, so there's nothing after this. I hope you all have a wonderful evening and the rest of all your lockdown and self-isolation. I look forward to meeting up and having drams with you back in the vaults or wherever when the world returns to normal. It's closing time. You might recognize the tune. Oh, it's closing time again. He'll be back shortly, with that stupid glazed expression in his eyes, and that leering look that says your luck's in, darling. And you know he couldn't manage if he tried. When he gets in, he'll drape his arms around me, and he'll kiss me with those rough, unshaven lips, and that tantalizing scent of beer and whiskey, more than just a hint of fish and chips. But I'll see from how his gills are getting greener that pretty soon he'll leave me all alone. He'll be running like a greyhound for the clodgy, shouting Huey down that big white telephone. Oh, it's closing time again. He'll be back shortly, with that stupid glazed expression in his eyes, and that leering look that says your luck's in, darling. And you know he couldn't manage if he tried. There'll be a clattering and a banging in the lobby, and on the stairs I'll hear his heavy tread, and then that dreadful crash on the ceiling. And although he didn't make it to his bed, he'll be lying comatose on the carpet, with his trousers in a tangle around his knees, and his big white arse glowing in the moonlight, while his shirt tails flutter gently in the breeze. Oh, it's closing time again. He'll be back shortly, with that stupid glazed expression in his eyes, and that leering look that says your luck's in, darling. And you know he couldn't manage if he tried. It was then I got the phone call for the police. You'll not be seeing your hubby for a while, for we picked him up outside a pub in Glasgow. So drunk we had to fling him in the jail. Well, we might have let him off with just a warning, but what he did next, it went right out of line, for we caught him urinating on the squad car, and he's appearing in the sheriff court at 9. Oh, it's closing time again. He'll be back shortly, with that stupid glazed expression in his eyes, and that leading look that sets your lucks in darling. And you know he couldn't manage if he tried, unless he tied a pencil to the side. I hope that fate never happens to you. Good night.
Absolutely brilliant as usual, Robin. Fantastic to see you. And thanks to everyone who's participated in our virtual pub session tonight. Richard Paterson, Steven McConnachie, my co-host, brilliant to see you. The Thompson boys, and of course our pub quiz participants. We are not back next Friday. We are back the following Tuesday, the 19th of May, when we would be at Campbelltown for the festival down there. So we're going to have a virtual pub session, Campbelltown themed, on Tuesday, the 19th of May. We're going to catch up with Ian McAllister at Glen Scotia for a tasting with him. We've got some brilliant music coming from a local Campbelltown musician. So lots coming up and plenty going on with the society between now and then as well. So cheers to everyone. Thanks for coming into the pub. Great to see you, and good night to all.
Cheers, Langeva.
Yes.
Cheers.